before the story begins, leave in the comments the city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Now take a breath and let this story speak to your heart. We all make mistakes. We've all said things we wish we hadn't, done things we wish we could undo. And yet, if you look back honestly, you will see that at that time, with the understanding and consciousness you had, you were doing your best. It's a curious thing, isn't it? We stand in the present, armed with new awareness, and we look back at the person we once were as though they should have known what we know now. But that earlier self could not have. It was moving through life with the tools available at that moment, with the clarity or lack of clarity it had at the time. To condemn yourself for the past is like scolding a child for not knowing calculus. You learn through fumbling, through error, through falling down. That is how the game works. Every mistake was part of the path that brought you here. So forgiveness begins not with grand gestures, but with this simple recognition. You were always doing your best, even when your best looked clumsy or confused. To see that is to soften. To soften is to begin to forgive. To forgive yourself is not to erase the past, nor to pretend it didn't happen. It is to see it for what it truly was, an experiment in being alive. Every choice, every blunder, every harsh word you regret may feel like a crime against existence, but spiritually it was one more painful lesson in learning how to walk. The trouble is, most of us carry our mistakes like stones in a sack, dragging them along year after year. Now we replay scenes in our heads, wishing we could edit the script. But the past is finished now. It is only an illusion carried by the mind. To keep punishing yourself is to argue with what no longer exists. There is a difference between learning and self-condemnation. Learning is alive. It opens the way forward. Condemnation is dead weight. It chains you to an old version of yourself that doesn't even exist anymore. Let me tell you about a woman named Isabel. Isabel was 41 years old when she finally admitted what she'd been carrying for 15 years. Guilt, not the kind that fades with time, the kind that calcifies into bone, the kind that becomes part of your identity. When she was 26, freshly married and ambitious, Isabel made a choice that would haunt her for over a decade. She prioritized her career over her relationship with her mother during her mother's final years. Her mother had gotten sick, cancer, and Isabel, caught up in building her life, convinced herself there would be time later. Time to visit more. Time to have deeper conversations. Time to say the things that mattered. She'd visit occasionally, but always distracted. Always thinking about the work waiting for her. Always half present. Her mother died on a Tuesday afternoon. Isabel was in a meeting. She got the call 20 minutes too late. The guilt didn't come immediately. At first, there was shock, then grief, then numbness. But about 6 months later, it hit her like a freight train. She had wasted her mother's final years. She had chosen spreadsheets over her mother's hand, conference calls over conversations that would never happen now, and she couldn't undo it, couldn't apologize, couldn't get a second chance. So she did what many people do. She sentenced herself to a life of self-punishment. She stopped allowing herself to feel joy. When good things happened, a promotion, a beautiful sunset, a moment of laughter, she'd catch herself and think, "You don't deserve this, not after what you did." She pushed people away, sabotaged her marriage, because somewhere deep inside she believed she didn't deserve love, not from others, certainly not from herself. She wore her guilt like armor. It became her identity. I'm the daughter who failed. I'm the person who got it wrong. I'm irredeemable. But here's what Isabel didn't understand at the time. Guilt has two faces. There's functional guilt, the guilt that says, I did something that violated my values. I need to learn from this and do better. This guilt is a teacher. It corrects your course, and then it leaves. Then there's toxic guilt, the guilt that says, I am fundamentally bad. I deserve to suffer. I can never be forgiven. This guilt is a prison. It doesn't teach. It only punishes. Isabel was living in the second kind, and it was destroying her. For 15 years she replayed the same scenes. Every missed visit, every distracted conversation, every time she checked her phone while her mother was talking. She built an entire mythology around her failure. She convinced herself that her mother died feeling unloved, abandoned, forgotten. But was that true? Isabel never actually asked. never allowed herself to remember the visits she did make, the times she held her mother's hand, the moments of connection that did exist, even if they were fewer than she wished. She only remembered what she didn't do, never what she did. This is what guilt does. It distorts memory. It cherry-picks evidence to confirm your worst beliefs about yourself. It builds a case against you using only the prosecution side of the story. Isabel's therapist, after years of gentle work, finally asked her a question that changed everything. If your mother were here right now, and she could see how you've been punishing yourself for 15 years, what do you think she would say? Isabel broke down, because she knew exactly what her mother would say. Stop. Please stop. I forgive you. I always forgave you. You were young. You were building your life. I understood. I never wanted you to carry this. But Isabel couldn't hear those words from her mother, so she had to learn to say them to herself. Here's the psychological truth about self-forgiveness. It's not about erasing what happened. It's about changing your relationship to what happened. There are 5 shifts that must occur, 5 internal movements that transform guilt from a prison into a teacher. First shift, separate behavior from identity. You're not your mistakes. You're a person who made mistakes. There's a massive difference. Isabel wasn't a bad daughter. She was a daughter who, at 26, with limited emotional tools and awareness, made choices she later regretted. That's not an identity. That's a chapter. When you fuse your identity with your worst moments, you create a self that can never change. Because if you are your mistakes, then to let go of them would be to lose yourself. But you're not your mistakes. You're the awareness that learned from them. Second shift, contextualize without excusing. Understanding why you did something doesn't mean you're letting yourself off the hook. It means you're seeing the full picture. Isabel was 26. Her frontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term thinking and emotional regulation, wasn't fully developed. She was in survival mode, building a career, trying to establish herself. She wasn't evil. She was young and limited in perspective. This doesn't erase the fact that she wishes she'd done things differently, but it adds dimension. It adds humanity. It makes the mistake understandable without making it acceptable. Third shift. Acknowledge the impossibility of a different past. This is hard to accept, but crucial. Given your level of consciousness at that moment, it was very unlikely that you would do anything different. If you had the awareness then that you have now, you would have acted differently, but you simply didn't have it yet. Not you should have, but didn't. You literally could not have. Because if you had the awareness then that you have now, you would have acted differently, but you didn't have it. You couldn't have. The past happened exactly as it had to, given all the variables that existed at that moment. Your job isn't to wish it were different. Your job is to integrate the lessons so your future can be different. Fourth shift. Honor the pain without drowning in it. Regret is natural. It's the sign of a conscience. If you felt nothing about your mistakes, that would be concerning. But there's a difference between honoring pain and worshipping it. Isabel had been worshipping her guilt, making a shrine of it, believing that if she suffered enough, it would somehow retroactively undo what happened. But suffering doesn't change the past. It only ruins the present. The question isn't, should I feel bad about this? The question is, how long will I let this define me? Fifth shift. Understand that forgiveness is not a feeling. It's a practice. Isabel kept waiting to feel forgiven, waiting for some moment of catharsis where the guilt would lift and she'd be free. But forgiveness doesn't work like that. Forgiveness is a daily choice. It's waking up and saying, today, I will not punish myself for who I was 15 years ago, and then doing it again tomorrow and the day after. Some days are easier, some days the guilt comes back, but each time you choose not to indulge it, you weaken its grip. Isabel started small. She began by writing letters to her mother. Letters she'd never send, obviously, but letters that said all the things she never got to say. I'm sorry. I love you. I wish I'd done better. Thank you for understanding. And then, the hardest one. I forgive myself for being young and unconscious. I forgive myself for not knowing what I didn't know. Forgiving yourself isn't a one-time event, it's a practice, a discipline. Here's what actually works. Practice. 1. The perspective. Shift. When the guilt comes, and it will, ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? You wouldn't tell them they're irredeemable. You wouldn't tell them they deserve to suffer forever. You'd show them compassion. You'd help them see context. You'd encourage them to learn and move forward. Do that for yourself. Become your own compassionate friend. Practice 2. The future self conversation. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, healed, whole, free from this guilt. Now have that future self talk to your current self. What would they say? Probably something like, "I'm so glad you stopped punishing yourself. Look what became possible when you finally let go. Look at the life we're living now because you chose to forgive." Let that future self guide you. Practice 3. The amends you can make. Sometimes you can't apologize to the person you hurt. They're gone or unreachable, or the relationship is too damaged. But you can make living amends. You can honor the lesson by living differently. Isabel couldn't apologize to her mother, but she could become the kind of person who showed up, who was present, who prioritized relationships over productivity. She started volunteering with hospice patients, sitting with people in their final days, being present in a way she hadn't been for her mother. This wasn't to make up for it. It was to transform the pain into purpose, to let the mistake become medicine, not just for her, but for others. Practice. 4. The self-compassion break. When the guilt becomes overwhelming, stop. Place your hand on your heart and say this. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of being human. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion I need. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but this physical and verbal ritual interrupts the cycle of self-attack. It creates a pause where healing can enter. Practice 5. The grief ritual. Sometimes what looks like guilt is actually grief. Grief for who you were, grief for the relationship that could have been, grief for the lost opportunity. Isabel realized she wasn't just guilty, she was grieving. Grieving her mother, yes, but also grieving the daughter she wished she'd been. She created a small ritual. Once a month she'd light a candle, sit in silence, and allow herself to feel everything. The sadness, the regret, the love that still existed. And then she'd blow out the candle and consciously choose to move forward. Grief honored, not suppressed, but also not permitted to dominate her life. But here's the deeper truth. Forgiving yourself often requires forgiving the world, forgiving life for not being what you expected, forgiving time for being finite, forgiving reality for being less controllable than you wished. Isabel had to forgive more than just herself. She had to forgive her mother for dying before they could have all the conversation she wanted, time for moving faster than she realized, life for not giving her a second chance, the universe for the way things unfolded. This isn't about condoning, it's about releasing. Because here's what holding on to guilt really is. It's a way of trying to control the past. It's saying, if I suffer enough, maybe I can change what happened. But you can't. The past is fixed, immutable, finished. The only thing you control is what you do with the lesson, whether you let it destroy you or transform you. Isabel chose transformation. Not immediately, not perfectly, but gradually, day by day, she chose it. And here's what she discovered. The moment she forgave herself, she became capable of being truly present for others. The walls came down, the armor fell away, she stopped sabotaging her relationships, started allowing joy again, became the person her mother would have wanted her to be. Not perfect, but present. Not flawless, but trying. The guilt didn't disappear completely. Sometimes it still surfaces, but it no longer runs her life. It's a visitor, not a resident. So let me ask you, what are you still punishing yourself for? What mistake from your past are you dragging along like stones in a sack? What version of yourself are you still condemning, even though that person no longer exists? Here's what I need you to understand. You were doing your best. At that moment, with the consciousness you had, you were doing your best. It might have been a messy best, a confused best, a best that caused pain, but it was your best. You didn't have the tools then that you have now. You didn't have the awareness. You were learning, you're still learning. And learning requires mistakes. That's not a flaw in the system, that's the system. So tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do something. Place your hand on your heart and say out loud, I forgive you for not knowing what you didn't know, for being human, for making mistakes, for carrying this guilt for so long. I forgive you and I release you. Say it even if you don't fully believe it yet. Say it as a practice, as an intention, as the first step on the path toward freedom. Because forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a choice. A choice to stop arguing with the past. A choice to honour the lesson without being imprisoned by it. A choice to live. Isabel is 43 now, 2 years since she began the practice of forgiveness. She still thinks about her mother, still wishes things had been different. But the guilt no longer defines her. She's present now, alive now, free now. Because she learned what every person who finds peace eventually learns. The past cannot be changed, but your relationship to it can be. And when that changes, everything changes. Your past is finished. It exists only in memory. The suffering you carry is optional, not easy to release, but optional. Forgive yourself, not because you deserve it, though you do, but because you deserve to live, fully, presently. Without the weight of stones you were never meant to carry forever, your life is waiting on the other side of forgiveness.